So, in the beginning of the second millennium, we have a very different Christian map than we had before. Or rather, we have a very different approach to the map that we had before. Before, the map was being conquered much more rapidly. Now things are slowing down. The fervor of the apostolic age and the great missionary conquests of the epoch of conversion slowed down. There were only a few exceptions to this general pattern of nations not coming into the church as nations, those being the ones in the New World, and in the Old World we had the one big exception, Lithuania, in the 14th century, thanks to St. Hedwig. Well, thanks to God and St. Hedwig. This nation, America, whatever we think of its foundation, was in fact the product of an age of revolt. By 1776, the impulse to convert nations had been stifled by compromises to Protestantism and revolution. These compromises, notably the Edict of Nantes, I should say most notably, the Edict of Nantes in 1598 and the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648, made compromise and toleration with heresy the norm in what was left of Christendom. It seemed as though the fire our Lord came to cast upon the earth was smoldering and about to choke out. Now we get into a little bit more close historical consideration, which will bring us to a necessarily brief discussion of the history of the Church in America. If we look back on the history of America, we find that there was early on an effort to bring the faith here. There were many holy and apostolic men who laid the foundation for the church in the Americas. First, the Spaniards, who were in their heyday at the time. We're speaking of the 16th century. As most of the nations of Catholic Europe were fighting a losing war with Protestantism, Spain, fresh from her glorious victory over the infidels, was sending thousands of missionaries all over the world. Many were martyred on these shores. They were to be joined here later by the French missionaries. These two nations who gave us Blessed Junipero Serra and the North American martyrs laid the foundation of what could have been a glorious Catholic edifice in the New World. But then the English came. The unfortunate history of the Anglicization of a continent, first claimed by Catholic nations, gives us the nation we have now. An English-speaking, nominally Protestant country with heavy Masonic influence and a natural tendency to degenerate into paganism. The failure to convert this nation is due largely to the sloth and weak faith of the Catholic settlers here. The idea of making the nation Catholic was not uppermost in their minds. Being accepted by their Protestant compatriots came first. Indifferentism, whether ideological or only practical, was the dominant trait of American Catholics. Of course, most of you in this room are aware of the less glorious aspects of the history of the faith in this country. Most of you have read at least some articles detailing the shameful history of men like the Carrolls or Bishop Gibbons. Most of us have some acquaintance with Americanism as a heresy. For those who would like a primer on the subject, I recommend Gary Potter's